The following video is a collaborative effort between myself and Jay of the Super Carlin brothers. Say hi to the people, Jay.
Hey, Brief History fans. My name is Jonathan Carlin. I'm one half of the Super Carlin brothers, a year-long / never-ending conversation between my brother Ben and I right here on YouTube. I'm a huge fan of Ryder's and the Brief History series, so I was really excited when he asked me if I wanted to help him do one, and even more excited when I found out that I got to do the Green Day episode, because I love Green Day. My favorite Green Day song, in case you were wondering, and I just know that you were, is Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Da 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 da.
Throughout this video, Jay and I will be switching off voiceover duty, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello and welcome to another episode of A Brief History. Today's episode, Green Day. Ready, set, go.
East Bay, California, 1987. Teenage musicians Billy Joe Armstrong and Mike Dirnt form a punk rock band called Sweet Children. Sweet Children's music took the heaviness of the 80s punk rock and mixed it with the catchiness and accessibility of the pop rock acts in the same time period. 1 year after the band's formation, Billy and Mike added a third member to the group named Jon Carlin.
And it was with this lineup of John on drums, Mike on bass, and Billy on guitar and vocals that Sweet Children was signed to the independent record label Lookout Records and began recording their debut EP. However, before releasing this EP, Sweet Children had to undergo a name change. The group just wasn't feeling positive about their name anymore, and so they rebranded themselves as Green Day, a name which came from a song that Billy Joe had written about being high.
Between 1989 and 1990, Green Day released a total of 3 EPs, namely 1000 Hours, Slappy, and Sweet Children, as well as their debut LP, 39 Smooth, which was released on April 13th, 1990 and received mixed reviews from critics. However, punk rock bands don't care about critics, and thus Green Day returned to the studio to record their sophomore album. But prior to recording this album, drummer Jon Carlin chose to leave the band and go to college. Carlin, who now works as a director of photography and green screen specialist in San Francisco, California, was replaced by an up-and-coming punk rock drummer, Trey Cool, who has the best name ever, who has remained the band's drummer to this day.
And it was at this time in January of 1992 that Green Day released their second full-length album known as Kerplunk. This record found large amounts of underground success and landed Green Day their first major label record deal with Reprise Records. Despite some backlash from their hardcore punk peers, Green Day went ahead with their major label endeavors, which culminated in the 1994 pop-punk classic, Dookie. Featuring a total of 5 hit singles, Dookie skyrocketed Green Day into the mainstream music scene, even peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Top 200 charts and earning Green Day a Grammy Award for Best Alternative Music Album.
So now Green Day was faced with the issue of how to follow up such a massive record. Between 1995 and 2002, Green Day released a total of 5 albums. The first was 1995's Insomniacs, which was followed by 1997's Nimrod, which boasted the classic ballad Good Riddance, aka the graduation song, or Time of Your Life. Then they took a quick break. Then they took a quick break for their families. Then there was 2000's Warning, 2001's Greatest Hits album, International Super Hits, and 2002's compilation record, Shenanigans.
While these records all charted and sold well, it seemed as if Green Day's overall popularity was beginning to plateau. Nothing they released during this time period even came close to the success of Dookie. And it was at this time in 2003 that Green Day once again returned to the studio to record yet another full-length effort, this one tentatively titled Cigarettes and Valentines. Unfortunately, after having completed 20 tracks for the record, the album's masters were somehow stolen from the studio. In response to this, Green Day decided to completely scrap the project and try something new, believing that Cigarettes and Valentines didn't represent the best work of which they were capable.
And what resulted from this decision was a completely unprecedented punk rock opera known as American Idiot, released on September 20th, 2004. Tackling issues such as politics, the media, and a fictitious anti-hero known as the Jesus of Suburbia, or Saint and Jimmy's, American Idiot was without doubt the deepest, most versatile, and most thematic album Green Day had ever put together.
Now, in an industry where charts tend to be ruled by pop and R&B solo artists who focus more on image and singles than musical integrity, not hating, just stating a fact, one would think that an anti-establishment punk rock opera would be the last thing to hit it big. But fortunately, the opposite was true in the case of American Idiot. American Idiot spawned 5 international hits, debuted at number 1 on the Billboard charts, being the first Green Day record to do so, and it won a multitude of awards, including a 2005 Grammy for Best Rock Album.
American Idiot didn't just renew Green Day's popularity, it shot them to a whole new level of success, solidifying their place in the music industry. And American Idiot has remained just as relevant to this day, thanks to a 2009 Broadway musical adaptation, and an American Idiot film is in the works.
Fresh off the heels of American Idiot, Green Day began to lay low for a few years, playing smaller shows and working on side projects. This hiatus lasted for a total of 5 years until finally, in May of 2009, Green Day released their 8th studio album, 21st Century Breakdown, which once again was incredibly well received, earning many of the same accolades as American Idiot, such as the number 1 spot on the Billboard Top 200 and a Grammy for Best Rock Album.
Green Day were now at the height of their career, having spent much of the 2000s building themselves as a punk band with a big sound and an affinity for grand themes. However, for their follow-up effort, the band chose to go back to their simplistic roots, ditching thematic concepts and more carefree, rebellious. We got it. However, for their follow-up effort, the band chose to go back to their simplistic roots, ditching thematic concepts of their more carefree, rebellious themes of their early days. But what the follow-up lacked in thematics, it more than made up for in quality and quantity.
Emphasis on the word quantity, for between September and December of 2012, Green Day released not 1, not 2, but 3 full-length studio records appropriately titled Uno, Dos, and Tre. Each record in this trio had its own unique style. Uno was characterized by a power pop style and peaked at number 2 on the Billboard charts. Dos had more of a garage rock feel and peaked at number 9 on the chart. And finally, Tre Prey was a more grandiose, stadium rock-oriented album that peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Top 200.
This trilogy of albums also marked the introduction of Jason White to the band. White had worked with the band as a touring member for a long time, but was finally made an official member with the release of the trilogy.
To accompany these records in 2013, Green Day released a documentary film called Quattro, which centered around the making of the album. And in 2014, they released an album of demos and unreleased tracks from the trio sessions known as Demolicious.
Outside of Green Day, frontman Billy Joe Armstrong co-owns a record label known as Adeline Records and has appeared on Broadway in the American Idiot Musical. Blah, blah, blah. That wasn't a word. Outside of Green Day, frontman Billy Joe Armstrong co-owns a record label known as Adeline Records, has appeared on Broadway in the American Idiot Musical, recently had a stint in rehab, and has collaborated with artists ranging from Iggy Pop to, more recently, Norah Jones.
Throughout the entirety of their career, Green Day have been accused of not being a true punk band. They were too catchy, they betrayed the punk rules by signing to a major label, but that's the thing. Punk has, or at least it shouldn't have, any rules. That's why it's called punk. When you take something that is pure and free and staple a bunch of rules and restrictions to it, it then becomes exactly what no one wanted it to be, and that's how Green Day felt. They felt shunned and held back by a community full of those who were shunned and held back, so they did what they knew to do. They rebelled against the rebellion. And as a result, they have become one of the biggest rock bands, let alone punk rock bands, in the world today.
And I think it's safe to say that they won't let anyone get in the way of becoming even bigger. Thanks for watching, guys. DFTBA. Da 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 da.